Welcome to Artists in Residences, the Westport Library's virtual artist series. I'm Carol Erger-Fass, exhibit curator at the library. Since Miggs and I started doing this series back in March, when COVID forced us all indoors, we visited the studios of over 20 Westport artists. And although each video is as different as the artist who's interviewed, they each share a connection to both this unusual time in our lives and the town in which we live and work. So today, you may be wondering why we are venturing out of Westport and zooming down to North Carolina to the studio of artist Charles Joyner. Recently retired as a professor and administrator at North Carolina State University College of Design, Charles Joyner has been teaching, creating, and exhibiting art for over 40 years. His work shows influences of his growing up in rural North Carolina, as well as his extensive travel to Ghana, where he also ran a study abroad program for art students. Charles's collages are filled with colors and patterns abstracted from African symbols, architecture, and textiles, which he combines with his own photography, screen printing, and painting to create intricate compositions. But Joyner says there's no doubt that his participation in a student program that brought him to Westport in 1964 was life-changing. So let's join Miggs in Westport and Charles at his studio outside of Raleigh, where he'll share some of his inspiration and his work.
Thank you, Carol. Yes, very special guest, Charles Joyner, who has a fascinating connection with Westport. He went to school here, played football here. And it kind of was sent him on this amazing journey that he's been on. And you're now, hi Charles, you're now in what, Raleigh? Are you in Raleigh, North Carolina?
Yeah, we just live, my wife and I, Lorenzo, live about 20 miles north of Raleigh, and where we both retired from state government. You know, I served in the university system for 43 years, and Lorenzo is a lawyer and served in state government for many, many years. And so we're retired and just enjoying that part of our lives. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So why don't you, what is the Westport connection? I mean, you have quite a strong connection here, and thanks to Roger Kaufman also for connecting us. So how did that all come about? How did you end up here of all places?
Well, it's interesting. In 1964, the American Friends Service Committee was working on projects trying to integrate schools in the South. And many of the schools, and maybe all of them, were segregated at the time. And that year, they selected 35 students to move north, live with host families, go to integrated schools, and I was selected to come to Westport. The host family was the Aders, Saul, Lita, and their two children, Wendy and Peter, and I became part of their family. And, enrolled in Staples High School. Paul Lane was a big influence because he was my football coach during the time. I also played basketball. And then Roger was in my homeroom. He became a friend. And the story about Roger is that he lived right next to the school, but was always late. And I always, needled him about, man, how do you do that? So anyway, so 64 through graduated in 1966, and started my career, my journey off to college and so forth and so on.
Were you aware when you were in Westport that it was an arts community? I mean, was that an influence at all at the time?
I guess the arts at that point in time were my secret life. But missed an opportunity to be engaged in it while I was a student at Staples.
But then you pursued, so you ended up studying architecture, right? At Iowa State?
I did, because my thoughts were, well, how would you make it as an artist? So,
good thought.
and then but interesting thing about that, my mom, who encouraged me to pursue any direction that I wanted to go, never believed that was going to be difficult for me. And I said, well, why do you think that? She said, well, you always were able to do things with your hands. And so I think that for me, that was quite a, way to encourage a young kid. So switched from architecture. And when I transferred from Iowa State, because it was just a very, very difficult time in the mid-'60s there, went to North Carolina A&T, which is an HBCU, Greensboro, North Carolina. And I always tell the administration there, and even the chancellor today, I said, you know what, A&T saved my life. Met my wonderful wife there, Lorenzo. We've been married for 51 years. And so, it was just a place to be, coming back to North Carolina. And the reason I went there is my brother was actually a student. He was ahead of me. And he said, well, why don't you come home and try this and so forth. So at North Carolina A&T, majored in art and design, and then went on from there in 1972, got an MFA in painting and printmaking from University of North Carolina at Greensboro, where there was a wonderful group of New York artists who came in to teach in their MFA program, which was exciting for me to one of my professors, a gentleman by the name of Tal Streeter, was a kite maker. And, later, Tal and I reconnected when I was a administrator, North Carolina State in the College of Design. And he would come and do kite making workshops for me. Spent time in Japan making kites. And to this day, I really cherish those kinds of connections that I had with artists and people like Tal Streeter, who taught in the New York University system,
Well, we should start getting into taking a dive into your work. Like, I know Africa's been a huge influence on you. Many trips to Ghana, but I don't know. Where do you want to? It's up to you. Where you want to start with some recent work, or talk about how the pandemic has kind of aroused, reignited your art.
Well, certainly it's kind of forced me into the studio, more hours than I will admit that I was doing before that time. And this is a good thing. I mean, when I created the study abroad program in the College of Design at NC State, I would spend many hours even before I took students. I think I went to Ghana 3 or 4 times in West Africa just to set the program up. So a lot of my energy and time was spent just logistics and directing the program. Now I'm actually sitting back and looking at all of the photographs, thousands of photographs, many, many pages of journals that the students created, because we always required them to do a journal, because we traveled to many, many sites. We would literally go off the grid into northern Ghana and Burkina Faso. We crossed over into the border with, just because we knew people. No visas or anything. But and so we were not tourists. We kind of immersed ourselves into really the culture. But now with the pandemic, and I'm sitting back and rediscovering all of those wonderful, just things that went on in the students' work. It is amazing.
So we can. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I just want to know
Yeah, so-
anxious to see something.
Yeah. Let's see some things. And like I said, there was a tremendous influence. So what I'm going to do is pull up on I'm going to share screen.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it was not difficult once you begin to take a look at the culture, the artifacts in the culture, and here you see my collection of Aquaba dolls. And I think this is the kind of the time frame that I started to move my printmaking, screen printing, into an area where I combined a number of media. And so this is an interesting story about this particular artifact. They are fertility dolls. And the story has it that a priest gave one of these to carved one of these for a young woman who could not conceive, and told her to carry this doll around, treat it as if it were her child, nurse it, feed it, whatever, and that she would conceive. And of course, the villagers just laughed at her like there was no tomorrow. I mean, they just ridiculed her. And finally, she conceived twins.
No.
So I translated this into my own series. Now, the background on this, they're all printed, a screen print, and then there's a surface that's actually painted acrylic paints on top. And I was kind of interested in this layering. And computer graphics was well on its way. And I said, one of the great things that you can do with a computer is that you can layer things. So I'm mimicking the computer graphics. So this was my first trial of trying to, taking that Aquaba doll or fertility doll and making it into a piece.
Yeah, it's great to see the origins. Are those traditional African patterns in the background, or things you made up? Or,
right, they are. They're, on the journey, and when we asked the students to do the journaling, we're looking at artifacts and motifs and patterns, and it's in the architecture, it's in the textiles. It's just everywhere. And you get really consumed by it. And so, it certainly impact my work in a tremendous way. And now, this is a photograph by a student of mine who was on one of the trips. He just finished his master's in architecture about 2 years ago. It is of the slave castle. That's and what you see on the left here are the dungeons.
Wow. Where
people were kept. Africans who were captured during the slave trade. And this particular facility is huge. I mean, you would not believe the size of this thing. And this is at Cape Coast. And so I had been here many times. Matter of fact, each group of students that I would take, the emotions were heavy and very high. I've made many trips here. It's actually on the National Register for Historical Places and so forth. So, and this particular photograph is an HDR, what we call a high definition range. A student took 3 different photos. It's a kind of chore in making this happen. There's an architectural element within the grounds of the slave castle that I picked up on. Couldn't figure out in my research why it was there. This kind of almost church-like symbol. And so I used that in a print collage and painting that I did. Now, you can't see where I did some research. And this was a statement by a I believe this particular person was a British citizen at the time, is visiting the castle in 1732. And he said that this castle has justly become famous for beauty and strength, having no equal on all of the coast of Guinea. And the lodging and apartments within the castle are very large and well built of brick, and a place to keep slaves. Arched and divided into several rooms, it will conveniently contain 1,000 blacks let down at an opening made for the purpose.
I find it, well, the influence is obvious, your architectural influence. I mean, you're sensitive to architecture, and to use it, it's great to see the inspiration for this from the photograph. It's really beautiful.
Yeah. And so the reason why the crosses are here is that right in the courtyard of the castle, there's a church where the British soldiers, first the Portuguese and then the British later on, who were part of this particular trade. This actually has a companion piece. I have no idea, and they got sold to two different clients. I don't know how that happened, and so anyway,
was it like a diptych? Was it meant to be side by side, or
Yes, it was meant to be side by side.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, I missed the deal on that. Going back to my roots in North Carolina, I was always interested in quilts that my grandmother and her sisters made. And so these quilt images are a series that I called Homage to Gee's Bend, to the African-American women in Gee's Bend, Alabama, who've been making these wonderful quilts. They're extraordinary pieces of work. And so I named, again, this, more of the collage, and then painting on top of the collage, and then using paper, using fabric in some ways that I collected during the travel.
And how big are they? I'm curious the scale of this.
These are 24 by 24.
Oh, okay. They're stunning.
Yeah, square. And this way. And then from the West African cultures, these Adinkra symbols appear in a lot of my work. There's about 60 or 70 different symbols that are used to, I would say, identify certain norms in the culture. And that these are one, and there's a textile called a Adinkra fabric that's worn as a funeral cloth. So almost every Saturday, where there was a big funeral, you would see people dressed in this red and black, or red and dark brown, or black and dark brown fabrics that have these symbols, these Adinkra symbols on them. Yeah. And so it's quite popular and used in the culture quite a bit to this day. Yeah. So some of the other influences, this series of photographs I actually made when I was a graduate student at UNC Greensboro. This is all the way back in the early 70s. I think this particular photograph. And I would go to church camp meetings in rural North Carolina. And there would be these 3-day festivals of people gathering for a church camp meeting. They were so popular, politicians would go there and campaign. And even though it was right across the street in this big open field from the church, there would be a couple bootleggers there, selling moonshine. But it was just amazing kind of a festival a step back in time in some ways. And so these folks became characters in, some of the, and actually this print didn't happen until my travels to Ghana. And so I started to mix the two. And that's what happens. I went totally back, never did anything with the photographs, just kind of made some prints. And I'd love to be in the dark room. I don't know about you, but I kind of, was sad when digital photography did come along, but it's great. Mm-hmm. But I love being in the dark room, smelling those chemicals. Nothing like a pan of, fixer.
Yeah.
But anyway, so these folks from the church camp meetings started to become, characters in my work. They, and to this day, I still refer back to, I photographed this event for about 5 years. Would go back every October and do this thing.
Oh, that's so great. Yeah, they became icons.
And the mix of kind of the symbols and patterns from West African colors mixed with that, just I thought worked, fairly well for me.
Oh yeah, and again, there's a structure. It's all kind of embedded in some kind of structure you've created, right. Invented, really.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think it's just kind of inventing my own reality in some way. At least this community now is merged with.
And they're very contemporary. You're combining like a very old culture or the artifacts of an old culture and the patterns and what colors and yet they're very so contemporary.
So the next step was to think about how I would get to this village series. Mm-hmm. And so I go to Ghana one year and the young man who, as a matter of fact, a good friend of mine who is a guide in the castle, does tours and works for the Ghana Tourist Board, said, well, let's go to my house. And I said, well, where's your house? And he was actually living, and I wish I had a photograph of it, but there is a fort that's on the top of the highest hill in Cape Coast. And he lives there and he overlooks the entire city. And all throughout West Africa, you see these colonial style buildings, except when you go north. When you go north, you literally start to see the mud houses. Mm-hmm. But these are colonial style homes, and many of these tin roofs were, torn off and replaced 3 or 4 times, but they always would turn this rust brown because the humidity would just change them. But the colors of the buildings represent some symbolism in the culture. Most of the yellow buildings that you see are there, go back to colonial times. They were there when Cape Coast was actually the capital of the Gold Coast. It wasn't Ghana at that time. It was the Gold Coast. It didn't become Ghana until they got their independence, I think in 1957 or something like that from the British. So my take on that was, I started pieces that really kind of, again, the architecture becomes a strong element in the process.
Yeah, you've distilled it down. Yeah, it's great. I love seeing the evolution of. We've got about 5 minutes left, so
okay. So I'm gonna
give
really
or take.
fly.
So whatever you want to do, but at least I love
so I'm gonna
these.
really fly. So that was, it's this particular process starting to grow, and and then I get really at some point I said, well, why not just get really bold? And that's the more
bold.
recent piece that's not.
This is.
Yes, that's a more recent.
So I know the introduction, only because I'm in graphics and Carol is too, but the halftone dots, the 4-color process dot patterns in there. Is that?
Yeah.
That's from graphic arts, and is that just a reference to what the modern,
Yeah, and I'll tell you what it is. It's not something I made. So I collected billboards.
Oh, Bill, you're right.
Screen printed.
I did that I collected them in college too, but I didn't do anything with them. But yeah, they had those huge dots in them. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the dots per inch are about 12.
Yeah, right. 12 DPI. Yeah, right.
Yeah, and and I just love that paper screen printed bill. And of course, now everything is done on a digital printer.
Sure.
And you don't see these as well. They're still dots, but they're so small on the digital printer, they don't come out as that way. So I've got a stack of this paper that I just absolutely love, and it appears in the work. Yeah. Yeah,
they had another texture to it.
Yeah. So I was telling you that I'm recycling old prints that didn't make it. Here's one. It's a piece of paper. It's on a nice, piece of, board or art paper, but it's going to be cut up. It's going to get cut up, and it's going to end up.
Oh, were you going to recollage it, like repurpose it?
Yeah, I'm going to recollage it. Are you able to see that?
Oh yeah, that's good. Yeah, that angle's good looking down.
Okay, so and gives you an idea of it's a fun example.
Oh yeah.
I was looking for a blue piece to put on this particular thing, and actually I've already collaged this board.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now I'm looking for the right size pieces of my buildings that I'm going to put in here, and just interesting enough, I saw this piece of paper. Somebody gave me a birthday card. And so now that's going to become part of it. Here's another screen printed piece of paper that I did earlier. Here's interesting enough. I was actually working on a photograph from my trip to Tanzania.
Mm-hmm.
You see the zebras out there on the Serengeti.
Yeah.
So I just cut it up and made it into. I doubt if this is going to go in this piece, but anyway, kind of give you an idea of now kind of positioning those. Some of the boards that you see here are now will be used in the next series of pieces. Okay, and then I'm going to show you a real great inspiration for me is there was a boutique artist in Ghana who I would visit every year. The lady is about my age, and she's just a wonderful woman, Mrs. Okansi. Well, Mrs. Okansi did a special piece for me, and here it is. It is a sample from all of her work.
Gee, all the boutique print.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that not cool or
that
what?
Is great.
I mean, it is a piece to be had.
Yeah. It's one of a kind. It's beautiful.
So yes, absolutely. And you would go in her shop, there would be dresses and shirts and so forth, but she put this together for me and said that, I could, have it. So again, a really great influence in my studio. And then other pieces that are being worked on now, and so forth. Oh yeah, and you probably can see my little Cricut maker over here. My daughter talked me into buying a Cricut maker because I was cutting out so much stuff.
I don't know what a Cricut maker is.
It's actually a little computer-driven cutter. We use it in screen printing and the industry. They're cutters for what do you call it? Heat transfer materials.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah,
Or vinyl lettering or something.
Yeah. When I was in the screen printing business, used those, and now there's a consumer size unit that you can put a piece of paper in here and roll it. It rolls through, and it'll cut out whatever's on the face of my computer.
Cool.
Yeah. The photograph that I showed you earlier about the slave castle is actually a copy of it in my studio, which I keep, so forth.
So it was a fort with all those cannons there. There was they were trying.
Yeah, I mean they were hell bent on defending that place. I mean, you're talking about thousands of people in there being held until those ships came to take them on the voyage. And there's a down here we entered some of these rooms, and my students kept asking the guides, well, why is the floor and the ceiling why is it so short in here? And he said that the years and years of people being in there and defecating, the floor just went up.
Oh, really? Oh my God! It was just layers of.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's haunting. But there were maybe 70 or so places like this on the west coast of Africa, where there were somewhere around maybe 100, and then I think Ghana had maybe 70 of them. They were, because of the sort of gentle slope of the coastline, and ships could come into to those places. Yeah.
Now you mentioned, we have time, a minute or two, in church. You were started to do things on the back of the cards that you found in church. Am I getting that right?
When we would go to, my wife and I would go to our son. You know what? I've got a couple. Let me show you that real quick. So this is a 5. It's 5 by 8.5, 5 by 8, 5 by 8.5, because they take a piece of paper, I guess 8.5 by 14, fold it, and that's the church program. So I'm sitting there and saying, "Oh man, this hour and a half, 2 hours is going to really wear me out." So I start drawing on the program. So, and I don't finish the drawings in church, but then I get home and I work on them. So you can see the type on the program, what has gone on that Sunday. And these are you just brought a Sharpie with you, or a pen, a felt marker? Just a marker. Yeah. I use that same marker to write the check for contributions. And, and just start making these drawings. And so... They're great. And you have what, hundreds of these, dozens of these? How many? I have probably 150 of these. I'm starting to combine them with to make patterns, using the entire drawing as a pattern. Oh, yeah. I was wondering, if you could, or tile all the cards together into some kind of... Absolutely. Yeah. And even to the point where some of these, just reference this railroad track, for example, coming through a neighborhood and so forth. And they are, and this one I've actually come back and cut out some of the white space. And then you see in the background here, loaded those with a different pattern.
Mm-hmm.
And so this series is, I'll even at night when I'm not doing anything else, I'll just grab these and begin to complete, one or two of these drawings at the same time.
Oh no, they're fantastic. I mean, they're sort of cubist and it's a style all your own. But I love the fact that they're done on something. They're done in the moment. They're done on something that was pre-printed, right? So there's a spontaneity to it, and it's just it's layered. You're layering something over
something else.
Modern culture, religion, putting your own stamp on it. Well, thank you so much, Charles. And we could flip back to so we can look at you for a second and say goodbye.
Okay. All right. So let's get out of that. And
there you are.
Okay.
So this has been terrific. And again, thanks again to Roger Kaufman, great musician in town who was in your homeroom. And we're grateful for that connection. Great friend.
Let me tell you. We've stayed in touch, many, many years. He's been truly supportive, I'll tell you that.
Well, they're wonderful artists, and it's great to see somebody, where I would say there's less Westport influence in your art than other influences, but you grew up there and something, you took away that vibe, whatever it was, and did great things with it. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. And I'll tell you, I think for me, Westport, in some ways gave me the courage to step out there, because I was kind of shy kid coming in, but it certainly gave me some courage to step out there, and it has been a great influence. Let me ask one question. The fact that you and Carol are graphic designers, do you know Alex Isley?
What's the name? Alex Isley?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll cut in just for a second.
Yeah, please.
Okay.
Alex Isley just helped the library do its entire renovation. He did all of the signage and graphics for the library. Yeah.
Yeah. Student under me at North Carolina State College of Design.
What a great, that's a
wow.
great circle to complete.
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly will.
All right.
Thank you both. I appreciate the opportunity to do this. And, this series, I love what you're doing. The libraries, I think it's certainly making it possible for artists to really get seen in this particular times. But appreciate what you're doing in this context.
Thanks, Charles. What a journey your life has been, from leaving rural North Carolina to go to school in Westport, to all those years teaching and traveling in Ghana. It was fascinating to see how you've literally collaged your life experiences into your artwork. Thanks for sharing your stories. To see more of our Artists in Residence series, check out the library's YouTube page, Westport Pub Lib, and search for Artists in Residences. Thanks, and hope to see you at the library soon.